Today on the Detangler, I want to tell you about the pubic hair of ancient Egyptians. Yeah, so pubic hair, pubes, what should I call it? The rug? Anyway, this mustache? There's no easy way to talk about it. It's offensive, it's dicey, it's dirty. I was at a dinner party the other day and I was telling people about the subject of my latest video, and there was an older woman there who, when I mentioned pubic hair, just you could see she was not happy with even the mention of this topic. And she's not alone. Whenever pubic hair comes up, it is met with disdain. It is controversial. You know, if I had a big enough YouTube channel now, I would be really worried about demonetization. But luckily, I don't. The point is, this is the Detangler, and I like talking about hair, particularly the rituals and rules and art and legends that we humans make about hair. Disclaimer, I don't think anything I'm doing here is pornographic or obscene or even titillating. I would be perfectly happy showing this entire video and any of my materials to my tween kid, but your sensibilities might be different from mine. Anyway, it's your warning. I'm not gonna do anything dirty here. I don't think. So originally, this whole story was going to be about merkins, which, if you don't know, are wigs that you're supposed to wear in your pubic region. I chose it because I am secretly 12 years old and the thought of merkins makes me totally snicker. But I also chose it because I'm really interested in that attraction-repulsion thing that happens with hair when it's on or off the body. And with a wig, which is something you can put on or take off the body, how it changes perception in people, in their reactions, is just fascinating to me. So I dived right into that merkin topic and found out that the history of merkins is very murky. Generally, when you read about it, you'll hear that they were invented or they showed up in 1450 as a way for sex workers to prove that they had a healthy bush of hair when in reality they had lost their pubic hair either because of lice or syphilis or some other sort of disease or old age, or maybe even they were too young. And so they wanted to have a nice full bush there to prove to their clients that they were healthy and the right age. I just don't think that that's telling the whole story. What we need to do is dive into the depths of pubic hair in the first place and find out why people are either growing it or removing it. Then we can start thinking about a merkin, which is essentially just to give you pubic hair when you don't have any and you're supposed to. It's a wig for a part that we humans care a lot about and yet don't talk very much about, right? It's our private part. So today we're going to talk about Egyptian hair down there. They're removing their hair, but why? Well, one common thought is because of lice. Lice was abounding back then. It's a dry, hot climate, and lice happens. In fact, lice is really one of the main reasons why people continue to shave their nether regions for a long time, up until quite recently. If you want to be clean, you can remove all your hair and then there's nothing for those little critters to nibble on. But another reason was ritual. So priests were definitely cleansing themselves, and that meant shaving all of their body hair and head hair on a daily basis. They had to be pure to enter the temple, and removing their hair was part of purification. Egyptian priests shaved their bodies all over every other day to guard against the presence of lice or anything else equally unpleasant. If you look at the door of the Temple of Horus at Edfu, you'll see this inscription above it. O priests, you who enter to the gods in the temple, do not deal wrongfully, do not enter when unclean. And part of being pure was removing all of their hair. I mean, all of their hair. They were shaving their heads too. So you can identify a priest in ancient Egyptian tomb paintings because they're bald. And oftentimes they are wearing a leopard pelt, which is a symbol of regeneration. And these are priests, and they are found in tombs. So naturally, regeneration is an important topic that they're often depicting. It has nothing to do with hair. I just thought it was interesting that they're wearing leopard pelts. Hair is a sign of life. Its daily growth is what's dictating the rituals of cleansing that these priests have to follow. But priests aren't the only ones who are shaving. You also have people just wanting to get shaved because it's a really nice spa treatment. There's the tale of Sinuhe, where Sinuhe was an Egyptian official who had been away on business and now came back to Egypt and basically went in for this elaborate spa treatment where he gets shaved from head to toe and he feels like a new man.
Years were removed from my body. I was shaved, my hair was combed. Thus was my squalor returned to the foreign land, my dress to the sandfarers. I was clothed in fine linen. I was anointed with fine oil. I slept on a bed. I had returned the sand to those who dwell in it, and the tree oil to those who grease themselves with it. So we have lice, we have spa treatments, and we have priests doing ritual cleaning. But the question is, how?
Well, they had razors. They were really sharp. I mean, now they're not anymore, but back then you could shave with them. They also had tweezers. You'll often read that people in ancient Egypt were using clamshells or other seashells to pluck out their hairs, and maybe lower classes did perhaps, but we don't have any evidence of this. No paintings and no artifacts. It is something that probably was happening in prehistoric or in Paleolithic times. But I think by the time we get into Egypt, it's a pretty advanced civilization and they had better tools. They had proper tweezers made out of metal that they could use. They also had depilatory creams, some really crazy recipes for it made out of scary stuff.
The shell of a turtle, it will be boiled, it will be crushed, it will be added to the fat of the leg of a hippopotamus. One anoints with it very often.
You'll also probably hear that Egyptians invented waxing or sugaring, but I doubt this is true. I think that this is just propaganda invented by big wax. It turns out that the Egyptians really didn't have the ingredients for this old recipe. They didn't have sugar, they didn't have lemon. So when you use the ingredients that the Egyptians would have actually had, it doesn't seem like it makes something that could have easily ripped out hairs from their roots.
So they were shaving, they were plucking, and they were using depilatories made out of really gross stuff.
So which parts were the Egyptians shaving? We know that the priests were shaving everything, and we know that if you go in for one of those nice spa treatments like Sinuhe had, that you get your body shaved, which probably includes the pubes, although it's not specified.
Did regular people shave their heads, though? It's often claimed, but I don't think so. We find a lot of mummies who have been buried and their hair is still intact on their heads.
King Tut's grandma, Queen Tiye, was buried with her hair. Ramses II also had his hair.
On the other hand, we do find a lot of wigs. So maybe sometimes people shaved their heads, probably for lice.
It could also be an occasional thing, going bald or shaving it all off could be a style, or you go in for that spa treatment every once in a while.
But it wasn't the common practice. In fact, we see this image here of a barber who has a whole bunch of people waiting online to get their hair treated next.
Princes were also shaving their heads, not entirely. It's called the side lock of youth, and we do see a number of princes who are shaved into this kind of funny looking hairdo.
The men were definitely shaving their faces. We see this in images, and it really differentiates the Egyptians from foreigners. So like, for example, in the tomb paintings at Beni Hassan, you can see the beards are distinguishing these people as not Egyptian. So while Egyptians were shaving their faces, the pharaohs, of course, were wearing these false beards called osrid. Both male and female pharaohs wore them.
In paintings, you do sometimes see people with pubic hair. They're usually the smaller people because Egyptian paintings are hierarchical, where the bigger people are more important and the smaller people are less important. Although sometimes the smaller people are just smaller because they're children who are also less important.
This one is showing the person whose tomb it is, along with his wife, and there's somebody there bringing them gifts. Those are the three larger people, and they're all wearing clothes, so we just don't know what their nether regions look like. But the four naked people are the grandchildren, and two of them have pubic hair. It's hard to really understand what's going on here. Is it that people don't shave until they reach a certain age? Is it that it was just a matter of choice? We know that this is a very wealthy family, so they could afford to shave if that's what they want to do. And if we look at their hairstyles, we can see that those are completely elaborate and very interesting, possibly for a future video, huh? I do have this one example that maybe is a merkin. I don't know. What do you think? This is an image of female musicians, and there's that one there who's naked, and you can see a black triangle, which looks like pubic hair to me, and there's some sort of a belt around it. Now, do you think that this is a belt holding on the pubic hair, or the black triangle anyway, essentially a merkin? Or do you think it's a belt that just happens to be above her pubic region?
We also occasionally see pubes on slaves or lower class people. This one's actually my favorite. It's porn. That's not why it's my favorite, but it kind of is, because, I mean, not in a titillating way. It's just that the fact that it's porn means that it's lower class. It's not like this fancy tomb painting that has to be all perfect and, idealized and formalized, right? It's much more of a casual document. What you see here are a bunch of, well, you see an orgy. Pubic hair existed, and it existed on these real-looking people. Not that real-looking. I mean, if it looked really real, I wouldn't be showing it to you. I think that this is dilapidated enough that I can get away with it. I don't think anything I'm doing is obscene or overly titillating. My intention is to be educational. So if you get turned on by this, then power to you. Unlike the tomb paintings, which are formalized and idealized, in this one, the men are like paunchy and hairy and balding, and they're not the ideal at all. The reason why I love this so much is that we're not looking at the idealized, formalized kind of art that we typically see in Egypt for 3,000 years. It's really easy to forget that Egypt was a civilization that went on for 3,000 years because the art looks more or less the same the whole time. But this looks different. With these men looking all out of shape and not very gorgeous, something's different happening here. It's not meant to be held for posterity. It's not meant to be showing this idealized perfection. It's meant to be dirty. These are probably slaves or sex workers who are depicted in there, and they're meant to be titillating. They have pubic hair. It's probably a dirty, smelly scene that they're depicting in there. This is porn, and porn is dirty. So you see pubic hair here. Pubic hair is maybe a bit of a turn on.
Then we get to Cleopatra, who is the very last ruler of 3,000 years worth of history. She's not even really Egyptian. She comes from Greek heritage, from back in the day when Alexander the Great conquered Egypt.
And she sees the writing on the wall. She knows that Rome is kind of running things in the world those days, and that's why she's having these diplomatic relations, if you will, with Caesar and Mark Antony, who she has children with. Lots of kings and queens of different cultures have these tactical marriages. So why would we assume Cleopatra would do anything other than that? But the thing is, what we know about Cleopatra mostly comes from the Romans who defeated her and didn't like her. And so they painted her as a femme fatale. That's really all she's known for now, is her seductive beauty. But I think she was a leader, and she was trying to do her job. By all accounts, she was very smart, spoke a bunch of languages, was really good at, leadery things. Even today, whenever you're looking up beauty products, you'll often see like Cleopatra's Secret or Egyptian Miracle. She very much signifies beauty, even now, more than 2,000 years later. It turns out that means that a lot of people spend a lot of time wondering what's going on down there.
Everyone wants to know, what did Cleopatra's curlies look like? And the fact is, we don't know. You'll find some people out there who say that she was really proud of her natural, beautiful, long, luscious pubic hair, and she would strut around naked and let everybody see it. And all of the wealthy aristocracy were really envious of her pubes, and so they got merkins to look the same. And the poor people who were so sad because they were covered in lice had to shave theirs off. Well, that's kind of contrary to everything that we've heard so far, where it's the wealthy people who get to shave. And we don't see any evidence of merkins. And like I said, I don't think she's going to influence all of Egyptian culture when she's at the very tail end of it. And then we get other people who say that she shaved everything head to toe. That would be more in line with what we know about Egyptian customs, but honestly, we just do not know. We do know that she came up with a few very interesting recipes involving hair, some depilatories and some for baldness. And some of these baldness recipes I just have to share with you, because they're really gross. One of them involved a mixture of burnt mice, rags, horse's teeth, bear's grease, deer marrow, reed bark, and honey. But then probably those recipes actually were from a different Cleopatra after all. The thing is that it's just so hard to track anything back. We don't have any of her actual information. We only have the propaganda, like I said, of what the Romans were saying about her afterwards, and they weren't very fond of her. So we know that we're finding these false beards in tombs, and we know that we're finding elaborate wigs in tombs, but what we're not finding are merkins. The evidence just isn't there to support that merkins were a thing for the ancient Egyptians. Most of what we know about Egypt comes from their tombs, so whether these mummies had or didn't have hair and brought with them wigs or not, it really was important to them in their life and certainly in their afterlife.
Because it symbolizes clean and unclean, best represented by the priests who are shaving it all off every single day versus that papyrus porn, which is showing people who are dirty and they have pubic hair. Hair removal and grooming and pubic hair is an important class signifier. Obviously, it's captured our attention that to this day, we still look back to Cleopatra and ancient Egypt as the standard of beauty. The way hair signifies clean or dirt is just, it's not hair's fault. Hair is so symbolic. The whole purification ritual of removing it, and then the whole pride of wearing it, either as a wig or as those false beards. There's that attraction-repulsion aspect that's always going on with hair, and what endlessly fascinates me. It's just a thing that grows out of us. We're mammals, More about merkins, more about body hair, and more about pubic hair to come. So join me for those. Keep watching The Detangler. Oh, like and subscribe if you haven't already, and tell your friends. Thanks.